Welcome to DasGeek. We're here to talk about the Mini Titan. You ever see those big giant guys and they call them like tiny? Well, that's why we're calling this the Mini Titan. It is a small Lian Li TU-150 with all kinds of Ryzen goodness packed into it. So we're going to look at the components that I chose for this build, and we're going to discuss the good and the bad because I took some risk on this build. I'm going to tell you right up front, I took some big risks. I went with manufacturers of components in some cases that I wasn't familiar with or that I had sworn off of for years. And I wanted to take another look at what they were doing and see if they had recovered from, their reputation. Because in a lot of cases over the years, I've seen manufacturers that when people become a fanboy of, they start to degrade as they get in popularity because they figure out ways to produce things cheaper and crappier, and it gets worse. So, you swear off them for a few years and you go back and look if they learned their lesson and went back to their foundation. And that's what I did here. So we're going to talk about the components. We're not going to run all the benchmarks in gaming and all that. We'll do that in a future video. So if you're somebody who's sitting there like, that's what I want to see, I don't care what's in it, then that video will be later on. This won't be for you. But if you like computer hardware, if you're a fan of Hardware Addicts, if you're a fan of Destination Linux podcast, then this is for you. I think you're going to enjoy some of these decisions, and I look forward to the conversation that you're going to have below. Let me know what you would have done differently in some of these cases, what you would have put inside the TU-150 if you were doing a dream build for yourself. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get more Hardware Addict goodness. Just hit that little subscribe button. Do it right now. Let's get into the video. We have a list here of all the parts that I used and my score that I gave them. So if you don't watch the rest of the video and you're just like, hey, I'm interested in the Noctua and FP12s, there you go. 3 out of 3 stars in my book, and everything else here scored out of 3 because that's just simple. But the one component out of all of this that was probably the least obvious choice for me was the ASRock motherboard. I've had bad experiences with quality control with ASRock in the past. I've sworn off them, but I came back to this one. Number one, because inventory in Mini-ITX motherboards is super low, or at least it was at the time that I was purchased. It's hard to find anything. And I was very happy with this purchase right up until this freeze frame of the ASRock NVMe M2 heat shield here, which I'm going to show you the post literally just pulled off. Like, I was just unscrewing the screw away from that, not the one that that post was attached to, and the entire thing just came off. And that's the kind of crap that I'm used to with ASRock, and it's unfortunate because everything else on this board is fantastic. It supports 3rd gen AMD, AM4 Ryzen builds, as an 8 power phase design. It supports DDR4 5400 plus. Has 1 PCIe slot, which is not a problem. That's all I needed. Some people don't like that, but that was fine for me. You've got the graphite output options for HDMI and DisplayPort, 7.1 channel HD audio with a Realtek ALC1220. It has fantastic components surrounding this machine. And that is what really makes it a shame that somehow they got this NVMe M2 post out of production without really doing any testing on it, because I'm not the only one that's had these problems. If you go to Newegg and you read the reviews, there are pieces and components and things that will fall off of this board that people are having problems with. Now, that's the only piece I had any issue with, but it just kind of shows again the quality control issue is a big problem for ASRock and continues to be. So I would not go with this motherboard again in the future, although on paper with Wi-Fi 6, Intel 2.5 gig LAN, reinforced steel slots. I mean, everything here looks like this should be the perfect motherboard, but they cheap out on the things that matter most, which is if you're going to put these great components on it, make sure that you're soldering them or screwing them in such a way that they're not just going to fall off. And if they could fix that with this motherboard, the quality control, they would have what and otherwise would be a near perfect motherboard, 3 out of 3 stars, because I really like everything else about this. I love the BIOS in this. It's super easy to navigate, easy to update. There again, there's their advertising of that M2 heat shield that the post breaks off. And I wasn't even, I can't emphasize enough that I wasn't even unscrewing the part that broke off. I was just letting the screw for the, because there's two screws to it on the front part, and then the post just started sliding, and I'm like, what is this? Now, I was able to easily super glue it back together, no big deal. But the point of it is this: you can't expect people to take your company seriously if you cannot go through the quality control and say, hey, this piece is supposed to be a post. It's supposed to have some foundation that holds this heat shield down onto the NVMe M2. Is it wise that we just glue it? Because from all purposes that I can see on the motherboard, now, of course, this happened after I already had it mounted, it appears that they just simply glued it on there and used a very cheap glue to boot. So from a motherboard standpoint, my most disappointed, because it had so much potential. They could have done so much more with it here. What a shame, ASRock. Okay, so the next part we're going to talk about is the Trident Z Neo Ram here. Now, this is made by G.Skill. It is a DDR4 3600 megahertz RAM. It is made specifically for Ryzen. That's thus the Trident Z Neo piece at the end of it. So if you see the Neo, you're going to see Ryzen logos all over it. Very, very good RAM. I've had hit or miss with G.Skill in the past, but this one has been fantastic. I was able to get it to 3600 through the BIOS, runs very solid, very stable. It has dual-toned aluminum heat spreaders and a 10-layer PCB, and it just seems to be very fast, efficient. I've had no issues with it. So great job, G.Skill, on this RAM. Highly recommend it for Ryzen builds. And as you know, AMD can be very finicky with the RAM that you choose. So make sure that you do your research if you're building a Ryzen machine in that area. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the look at it, now respect it. The Ryzen 7 3700X. What a beautiful processor. There's not a lot that has to be said here. If you have not been hiding under a rock, then you know AMD Ryzen CPUs are the way to go. This does not disappoint. It's insane. It's ludicrous. It's amazing. It's the AMD Ryzen lineup. So yes, 3 out of 3. Very happy with that purchase. Now this is where things started to go awry again. We have the Noctua NH-L9A AM4. It's a fine fan, but it's low profile. You're not going to do any overclocking at all. In fact, you're not going to get to the full boost clock capability of the 3700X here. It's kind of loud. It's not my favorite fan by any stretch of the imagination. I should have gone either with an all-in-one cooler or with something bigger. You can even fit the big giant Be Quiet variations into the Lian Li TU-150. So that was a mistake on my part, and it was just something that I thought, let's keep everything really tight and concise and clean inside. But I didn't go with the windowed version of the case, which we'll get into in a moment, because I didn't want to have to do all the cable ties and all the cable management and all of that. So with that being said, I should have just went with the bigger cooler and let things be nice and freezing cold and quiet. But the low profile fan is okay. I don't think it's better than the stock cooler that comes with the Ryzen 7 3700X. And if I was to do it over again, I'd have gotten something different. Okay, so now for something completely adorable. This is the Corsair Sf600. It is like a little muffin. It is so cute and tiny. When I pulled it out, I couldn't believe how small this thing was. But it packs a lot of power, baby. 600 watts. I've had no issues. Fully modular, really low fan noise, keeps itself cool. Really an undervalued place to spend a good amount of money is on a power supply. You do not want a cheap power supply. You want something that's going to last for a long time and that's not going to end up creating problems for you down the road. So I do recommend that you don't ignore your power supply when you're doing a PC build and go with the name that you trust, with a bunch of people who have reviewed it and used it for, you know, longer than a week, to say, hey, this is something that's really fantastic. You're going to get a lot of life out of. And I think the SF600 is definitely one of those power supplies that fall into that category. And it's a muffin. It's like this big, people, like this big. It's cute. You got to check it out. All right, now for one of my favorite purchases in this entire design, the Lian Li TU-150. First, Mini-ITX, Mini-DTX, absolutely tiny, but look how much you can pack into this tiny little case with a handle. So you want to take it to game sessions, you want to take it to Southeast Linux Fest, you can do that. 1.5 millimeter aluminum panels, but you can see the difference in the quality and detail in the aluminum and the way that they're washing it. Push panels so you can just pop them out. No screws, no thumb screws, no losing screws in your carpet, none of that. Accommodates up to 4 fans. You can have fans on the bottom. You can have fans front and back on this as well. And of course, you have so much room for even a giant RTX 2070 like what I put in here. So you don't have to find some super small video card. 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch on top of, in the case of my motherboard, an NVMe slot in the front and back. A lot of people going NVMe M2. So you do not need those additional space storage, but it's there. You have reset, audio mic, USB 3.0, power button, all of that right on the front of your case, and the top panel cable management, top and back panel. So I see a ton of YouTube videos talking about the Lian Li TU-150, and then they never pop the top to put the cables through the top, and they're like, well, you know, it could use better cable management. No, it could use reading the manual. That's what it could use, which is rare that I actually do. But I love this case so much. It looks so fantastic, takes up so little space on my desktop. And look, you can just carry it anywhere you want to go. It's practically like a little tiny laptop on the go. It weighs nothing because the power supply is so tiny. Everything that you're getting in there. I mean, the biggest thing in my machine is the video card by far. The front panel pops off. Everything has those pop tabs. You can see it's all rolled, so you're not going to cut yourself on this. You have fan filters as well. It generates fantastic airflow. If you're gonna build an ITX, this TU-150 is the way to go. I am so impressed. 3 out of 3, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. Best of the best. Really love this case. I have zero complaints about it. You can see that you connect the power supply with that cable inside, and then it routes one of the power cables that you connect to still to the back. So you're not plugging in weird spots or anything else, but the power supply is a little different there. But just plenty of room to make this little case what you want it to be. And the attention to detail from Lian Li, I just can't emphasize that enough, how brilliantly they did this case. One of my favorite purchases of the year. Okay, so I'm going to roll through the rest pretty quick. RTX 2070 Armor. You guys know NVIDIA. You've seen plenty of benchmarks on the 2070. Runs 2K monitors fantastically. Get great frame rates on this. You'll see more of this in the benchmarks. I can't wait for Big Navi to come out, but obviously AMD has bigger things coming, and NVIDIA has already released their bigger things with the 3rd generation 3000 series of cards they have. So Hardware Addicts covers that this week in full, so check that out. The NFP12 fans with the front and back, so I have that neutral pull in, push out air. I absolutely love these fans. It's completely Noctua all the way through. High quality fans that you're going to absolutely love, are very quiet, unlike the CPU cooler that they have here. The CPU cooler did, by the way, come with all the thermal paste and things like that and extension cords, which was nice. So it's not a bad cooler. I kind of beat up on it a little bit. It's just, you know, you could use it for other purposes. It really wasn't meant to cool a 3700X. That's a my bad situation. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about, I adore. Sabrent is amazing. I waited forever because of FedEx for this thing, but oh my gosh, is it fast. Wait till you see the read differences. I have the Sabrent 4.0. I also have the Sabrent Q that runs on 3.0, PCIe 3.0. You're going to see a huge difference in these in read and write speeds. Just an absolute monster. I love this company, and their customer service was fantastic. Just love them. Love them. Oh, what else can I say? So I want to take a moment to pause and all these components together. The price is $1,753.98. Now, this would not be possible if it wasn't for my full-time job, but also not possible if it wasn't for the amazing patrons out there that support this channel and the sponsors DigitalOcean and Bitwarden. Bitwarden, my favorite password manager before they ever became a sponsor. Open source, completely secure. You can have it in your browser, your phones, your computer. It's just amazing. They audit themselves. They have third-party auditors come in. DigitalOcean is the best cloud management platform. You've probably been hearing about the cloud forever. But if you try to sign up for one of these big giant company cloud services, you're going to get lost. You're not even going to know how to get through their API or how to navigate around. DigitalOcean simplifies that. I drop servers on it all the time. I use them well before they were ever a sponsor. I love them. In fact, we have a Destination Linux Network Xenotic server setup, Xenotic with an X. That game is a first-person shooter like Unreal Tournament. We have a server hosted on there that's out there right now. You can go game on with the DLN community and the DasGeek community. Of course, we haven't officially advertised it on Destination Linux yet, but I expect that's going to pick up steam a lot. So big thanks to them. But I spend my hard-earned money at the end of the day, plus the support from patrons and the support from the sponsors to buy this equipment and to show it off to you. And I think that makes this channel very authentic in a very different way, because I have had companies send me stuff, and when I'm doing a review and I haven't spent my hard-earned money on it, my opinion of it is different. It's much easier to be pleased with it because I'm not writing a check or handing $1,700 in cash over. In this case, $1,700 was handed over to talk about the good, the bad, the indifferent. And I think there's, some of the negative that I had for some of the components like ASRock and things. What an amazing motherboard with just a little bit of attention to detail would have made it such a better experience. But because I spent my hard-earned money on that, it wasn't a situation, and I needed to get this build out. I was just going to send it back, get another one, and hope that's better. I'm going to give you the real information as it happens. So I hope you appreciate that and enjoy it. And if you do, hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you so much for the amazing amount of subscribers that we've gained and for your continued amazing support in the comments section. I love all of your faces, and remember to get out there and fill your brains with information. Educate yourself. It's what this channel is all about. That's what life is all about. Fill those brains, people.
Don't forget to subscribe! And big thumbs up if you like this video.